For those who have a passion for the creative and performing arts, they can quickly find themselves as accidental entrepreneurs. And we've all heard of the stories of the starving artist, but someone who's able to bring these creative skills and entrepreneurial skills together can thrive.
The creative, we always have the idea, the vision, but the business owner also has to have a mastery over operations. And so that was the true aha for me. I was like, wow, these younger students are realizing what I learned in college, which is traditional arts education sometimes fails to show you the career building skills and mindsets that you have to do this professionally.
And today I have the opportunity to interview an amazing artist and entrepreneur, Roger Lee, the founder of Roger Lee Dance Company and Roger Lee Arts.
Assuming, it's all about the marketing, right? The more dollars you put behind the marketing, the more that this audience will come out. No, it's not the marketing. This audience actually wants to see themselves represented on stage through the themes.
Roger, thanks for being here.
Hey, Dr. John, thanks so much for having me.
Tell us about all the things that you do, like your performing arts company, your arts company. I think that would be a great place to start, and then looking forward to hearing about your journey.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. Hello, everybody. My name is Roger Lee. I'm born and raised in Philadelphia, and I am proud to be an artist, especially during a time where artists are having a really difficult time, and we always have, right? But there's some real challenges going on out here, so I'm just really proud to still be representing and trying to make things better for artists. I started out as a painter. A lot of folks don't know that. You know me more for dance, but I did start out as a painter and morphed more into a professional dance career after college. And the journey's been real. I remember being 22 years old, graduating, having to figure out things very quickly. And what I knew was that I wanted my life to look and feel really differently. Right, and then wanted to just up and move to a new city and all of that. So I said, let me use Philadelphia, my home city, as a launching pad for my career to live and work and be. And I've still been doing that for decades since. So it's been the real journey. Started out as an artist, later on became an arts entrepreneur, and now I do both. So just really, really happy and blessed to be here with you today.
That's excellent. Yeah, the true story of an accidental entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
Well, and actually, I would say, even though that maybe started that way, I know in your career, you've been very intentional about your entrepreneurship as well as your creative art side. And well, so talk about how it all began. Like, what was the moment and it could have been even before it all started, but when was the moment where you're like, I want to be an artist and an entrepreneur, and I really want to make this part of my life? What was that launch like?
So this was way back. This was actually when I was 12 years old. That was the year I booked my first professional gig as a dancer. And it was for a local television show, a morning program. And they were looking to boost up the ratings. And they said, what better way than to bring on teen dancers to kind of like promote our products and our shows. So, I was really blessed to be casted at a young age. And I got to see very quickly some things about the entertainment industry. And there were some things I liked and some things I didn't like. And I knew from that experience, I said, well, I love dance. I love the feeling of being able to be paid for my passion, right? It's a great, great feeling. But I also have the potential to build something that is really my dream environment, because environment matters a lot, right? Sometimes if you're in the wrong environment, you can't grow in the way that God intends for you to grow. So I said, all right, I need to build something once I'm older that will really inspire me and other artists alike. So it started really young,
That's amazing. Well, and so what point did you realize I think there's a way I can do this continually? And I know, we in the past we've talked about there were sort of the traditional paths for the arts, and you kind of blazed new trails. And so talk a little bit about that journey.
Well, thanks for saying that. I realized I could do this consistently when I really changed my mindset. Right. It took a real shift in mindset of saying, although I'm an artist, I'm an entrepreneur as well. And that means that I have the power to shape my destiny, right? To come up with goals and achieve them, to try things, to fail fast, to have success, to not, right? And all that's relative, right? With a success. But I realized very early after college that if I self-produce my own art, I'll be able to do this for the long haul, because I'll maintain creative control. I'll be in charge of financing my own products and projects, and that comes with its own challenges, obviously. But I just knew if I could maintain control over what I was doing, that the longevity could be there. I heard and saw a lot of really horrible situations for some really talented artists who had no control over their careers and their artistry, and their careers were shortened because it was all at the hands of somebody else, right? So it was if that person felt like releasing their album. It was if that person felt like funding that show. And I just never want to fall into that category. I said I have to maintain. I know it's going to have to be a slow and steady thing. There's going to be some pivots, some perceived failures, but I just knew if I could hold on to control, this could be a long-term thing. And proud to say, we've been rocking and rolling for 12 years now. So.
Yeah. Well, when you hear that so much in I'll call it like kind of the traditional approach to creative arts where there's a patron or you're looking for patrons to write a check, to underwrite everything, but then there's strings attached. They come with a lot of expectations. And now all of a sudden it's not the creator's work or the artist's work, but it's really it's producing someone else's vision. What are some of the ways you've used to kind of work in a different way or to maintain that self-production?
That's a wonderful question. So one of the main ways I did that was freelancing early on. So before I, created a company and became a full entrepreneur, I was a freelancer, right? And so I got my feet wet in a lot of entrepreneurial activities, right? I had entrepreneurial tendencies, and I said, well, let me book my own gigs, let me do my own self-promotion, let me sign my own contracts. So I did all that for a really long time. And they gave me the skill set, right? The foundation to then formalize later when I was ready. So I remember it was during grad school where I produced my first show, again, getting my feet wet, and said, all right, that went really well. Let's now start an LLC to actually have a house for this type of work. And that's kind of how things started growing and going. But yeah, it's just, again, been the process has been like a step-by-step figuring that piece out. But I will say, when you have your own business, it also shifts your mind into not just being an entrepreneur, but actually a business owner. And I feel like they're related, obviously, but definitely two different things, right? I feel like the entrepreneur, right, we're the creative, we always have the idea, the vision, but the business owner also has to have a mastery over operations, or else the idea won't go anywhere or it won't sustain itself. So, I had to learn a lot through trial and error on how to actually run a business in addition to just being that creative visionary. Because for me, like, it was more of a parallel going from artist to entrepreneur. I'm like, oh, that's just all creativity. But the business ownership was the bigger struggle. And I'm glad I figured that piece out because it can be very difficult.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you make that parallel between being an artist and being an entrepreneur. I think of the first two big phases in my mind of the entrepreneurial process. The first one being ideation, so coming up with ideas and that creative process. And the next is the minimum viable product, like getting that first version of the product and trying to get it out in the world. If you kind of think back to that time frame, what did the ideation process look like, and then how did you start to bring that into that first version of a product, so to speak?
Yeah. So this is a really unusual way that I went about it, right? But I remember being in grad school. I was finishing a degree in arts administration, and for my thesis, I actually wrote about how to build African American audiences for professional dance concerts in Philadelphia. So it's obviously very, very niche. And it was because that's what I wanted to do, right, with my own work. So I kind of used my research as part of the ideation process for myself, right? So I was looking at what other people did, what went well for them, what didn't, interviewing folks who were doing the things I want to do, creating case studies, reading case studies, all that stuff. So I had like a really strong research foundation, which is pretty unusual for entrepreneurship because we just build it, hope they come is the old school approach, or we do a bunch of like proving grounds. But mine was more through the research, and they gave me the confidence to then say, okay, let's take it to the stage. So my real ideation process was producing that first concert. And it was in April of 2012. I was like right at the end of writing that thesis, getting it approved for graduation, and literally putting it to the test. So I charged money for tickets, right? I had to book a venue and pay for that. And so I went through a full-on like business production process and hoped and prayed that somebody would come to the show, right? And it's always great having familial support, of course, and spouse and all that. But it's, you want some people to come and help you make some money back, right? And I just felt so blessed, John, and we did 3 sold-out shows, over 20 media coverages from that. It was a lot going on at that time, and I was like, wow, this is my true proving ground. Like, people want more of this. I remember the audience was like, when's the next one? We're bringing everybody. And so it's kind of like launched everything for me, because it's one thing to just have like the studies, right? Study show, blah, blah, blah. But Philly audience is, they're very loving, but they're also really critical. And they'll let you know really quickly if you got it right or you need to go back to the studio, kind of thing. So I was just really blessed that I had it right and was able to kind of propel.
Yeah. And there's so many things I love about that part of your story, because it's taking that learning process that, I mean, let's face it, sometimes education can be very dry and theoretical.
Yes.
And you were really taking the learning that you were doing, but focusing it on something that you had this passion for, and the research really fueling almost like your assumptions.
Yeah.
But then really getting actionable right away. And the MVP is since that first show. And wow, what a point of customer validation when you sell out 3 shows, paying customers. I mean, that's like an entrepreneur's dream in a lot of ways, getting that kind of validation so early on.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it truly, truly was. And I was so satisfied with even that. But once the press started saying like, oh, this is the next, up and coming such and such, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Because like you really just helped my marketing. And so, so many things were starting to transpire. And I'll say this too, John, right? Like with the research, it stopped me from making a lot of mistakes. So I kind of did go into that project, like assuming, oh, it's all about the marketing, right? The more dollars you put behind the marketing, the more that this audience will come out. And the research absolutely debunked that myth. They said, no, it's not the marketing. And they used real examples to show companies that put millions of dollars into marketing and still didn't get the audience turned out. So they're like, no, it's not the marketing. This audience actually wants to see themselves represented on stage through the themes. And so I really started focusing much more on how culturally relevant themes is the key, not the marketing. And that saved me a lot of time, money, and energy. Like you said, trying to just like, do all this big, grandiose, expensive marketing if my thematic content wasn't right. So I made sure at the beginning, like, yeah, we're going to have themes that resonate with the audience.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and you just see so much content out in the world saying it's about the gimmick, it's about the trend, it's about the hype. And it really, you got to see that firsthand. Your research pointed you there, but you also proved out like having high quality, self-produced, creative content and getting it in front of real people and getting that response had that great effect. I love that.
Oh, thank you so much. And it was so funny, right? Because like my research really did focus on African American audience, and like, yeah, I had that audience there, and I was like really fortunate too. But also had everybody there, and that was a really, really awesome thing to see in that in Philly, right? Where sometimes the arts can be very siloed by like group and sexual orientation and gender and race and all these things, but everybody came together. So it was just like really amazing to see that too, and that's been consistent throughout all my years doing these shows. So that's never changed, but I love that. I was like, wow, I truly have like a rainbow of an audience here every single time. And that made me really happy.
Yeah. Well, and how much of it had to do with the following you had personally, like your personal brand, your personal engagement? How much did that really bear in on how that first show did performed and then even from there?
I would say a lot for sure. Prior to that, I spent a lot of time teaching dance and performing for others, right? So I was in a bunch of dance companies right out of undergrad. I think I had like 3 or 4 in my first year, just trying to get my feet wet. And so people knew me from the stage, but also from the classroom, right? So I was all across like Philadelphia and New Jersey and New York and things. And so people didn't know that I was a dancer. And I think that was more the story in the beginning. People were like, hey, young dance artist launches a company. And the story shifted obviously over the trajectory, right? But that was very much the story in the beginning of like, here's a very young 23-year-old person starting this company of artists. What are they about? And so there was a lot of curiosity for people. And a lot of my students came out, a lot of their families came out. So I would say that absolutely was the beginning audience, was like a real fan base. And then luckily, a lot of my artists came with their own as well. So, when you put a bunch of us together, things start to sell.
Yeah. Well, it's like kind of the power of a good story paired with a power of a network of people that already kind of knew you and were already very interested in the art that you were producing. So that's great. So I want to talk a little bit about how it started to grow. So that was like, everything got off the ground there, starting with Roger Lee Dance Company. But at one point, all of a sudden you started to really expand and move forward. So talk a little bit about that era and like when you realized it was time, and then some of the steps you took to make it happen.
Yeah, so I've been in arts for a long time, right? Started with painting, like I said before. That was more of not a secret thing, but I just wasn't doing it professionally, right? So I had like background in it academically, but a lot of people just didn't know I was doing that. And so I always wanted to incorporate painting and other art forms into my work. I just knew I couldn't do that in the very beginning. I knew that like how you launch right? What the story is, all that matters a lot. And I said, I really have to come out the gate swinging. Dance is my best attempt at that. And I love dance. So it was like, it wasn't a put on thing, right? It was something I loved and was passionate about. But I just knew if I came out with the arts, it would be way too generalist. People want to know which way I was going. It's like, hey, is this guy painting? What's he up to? And so I don't think I would have had that same initial success if I didn't focus down. So I knew in the beginning it was going to have to be all about the dance, kind of keep the other stuff to myself. But I hope and pray there'd be a time where I was able to like introduce all of myself in arts, right? And that came about 3 years in. More, media coverage I got and things, people started looking more into me, and they're like, oh wait, you do paint and you do these other things. So started getting requests for like commissions, can you paint my family for the holidays? Can you do these other things? And so a lot of that happened. I was teaching and people were like, hey, you're pretty funny, like you do acting and stuff too, like not as professionally, but like can you maybe like teach my kids that too, in addition to dance, so that they're better on camera and stuff. So yeah, there were a lot of things moving at one time where people were asking for additional types of instruction. They were asking for additional products and services. And so I changed the name of my company, right? We started out as Roger Lee Dance LLC for like the business. And then I changed that to Roger Lee Arts LLC to be a little more encompassing of that growing vision. And part of that growth included opening an arts academy, right? So now you got this business that's operating two awesome divisions, if you will, right? So you still have this like professional dance performance company, but then I had an arts academy that taught people how to draw, how to dance, how to sing, act, all that stuff. And so we did summer camps, we did after school programs in urban areas in Philly and stuff. And it was just a really, really cool experience doing that. Additional products and services, more paintings and stuff, right? So yeah, the expansion was great. That came about 9 years ago, right? 2015. And then more coverage came. People were like, oh my God, here's this new like multidisciplinary arts academy. It's not just like a competition dance studio where kids compete for trophies. Like we didn't do any of that, right? This was straight up old school training. Yeah. And so things were changing, they were shifting, but I feel like two things were happening, John, right? People started asking more about everything else and not as much about the dance company. I'm like, hey, we're still over here. We're in our like third year at the time, and like we're still doing shows. But people became more interested in the academy and like other things. But then I realized I wasn't as interested in the academy. So it was that weird duality of like, now this is what the audience wants, but it's not truly what I want. And I spent a lot of time like soul searching and praying on it. And I just realized like, that glitter, the dance parents stuff, like it just wasn't for me. And so yeah, I made the decision to not continue that about 2 years into the process. And I remember people were so sad, oh my God, no more camps or no more, it was like a really tough thing. And of course I missed the students and all that too, but I just realized like, yeah, if you grow in an unintentional way or a way that's not authentic to you, you're eventually going to have to make a shift. And so I'm just really happy I figured it out 2 years in instead of spending like, 20 or 30 years doing that and then being like unhappy. So yeah, that was kind of the journey.
Well, I've seen that with so many entrepreneurs in so many different categories of, all of a sudden, getting bigger and bigger and different things coming in, and now all of a sudden getting, almost like spread out across lots of different things and not having that focus. So I would think that's probably challenging to have something that's clearly building your base and bringing a good bit of revenue, but then realizing it's not your passion. Like what was the moment when you thought, wait a minute, I don't know that this is the right direction. I maybe need to focus in. And what was that decision process like?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, there were many, right? But I would say the most notable thing that really was like that aha for me was when students would come back, right, to me and they would say like, oh yeah, I went on this audition or like I had this like gig, and that made me happy because I'm doing my job. They're like booking. But they were like, I didn't feel prepared, not artistically. I felt great. They're like, I felt like I was out dancing, out singing, out performing folks in the room, but I didn't know, what else comes with the career, like the marketing side. I didn't understand any of the business behind it. And so that was the true aha for me. I was like, wow, these younger students are realizing what I learned in college, which is traditional arts education sometimes or oftentimes fails to show you the career trajectory, right? Or the career building skills and mindsets that you have to do this professionally. And so I kind of knew that in my heart, but like hearing that out of the mouth of a student, it was that true aha moment where I was like, I have to pivot. And I'm still an educator, right? I love teaching. I was like, but what I teach matters. And after that conversation, I just did not become as interested in teaching the traditional technique. This is how you get your leg up. This is how you paint. This is how you mix colors and all. No, my teaching changed to this is how you build a sustainable career as an artist. And so to do that, I said, well, I have to change what I'm doing, right? So Roger Lee Arts Academy, want to put that on the shelf for a minute and actually start creating products and services that teach artists how to build a sustainable career in a way that I was never taught, right? I did it through trial and error and like spent a ton of money and time and all that, but I want to do this in a real systematic way where people can like look at my resources, go through my coaching and stuff and be like, oh, this is not necessarily a linear path, but this is a path that I could follow and have some degree of success in. And so they say, be the change you want to see in the world, right? I want to see a place where artists weren't just trying to figure it out, like I said, wasting time, money, and energy. So I said, all right, well, nobody out there is, there are tons of people who teach like the business of art and, how to start an art business, but nobody was really focused on the nuances of an artist's career. And if they were, John, they weren't artists, right? So they were kind of like hitting it from a business perspective. But I'm like, no, I literally had and have a career as an artist. So let me share what I'm learning and experiencing. And so the first way I did that was like writing an ebook about all this stuff, right? Artist career building steps, right? What are the steps you should take to build or can take to build a sustainable career? People really liked the book and they were like, hey, what else you got for us? So started offering one-on-one coaching for folks, started doing workshops. Like I have a whole boot camp around this that's based off the book. It talks about my 4-step process. And then, the pandemic hit. And I said, well, wow, not that the information I gave, it's not obsolete, but I need to like go back and update it. So I definitely updated it during the pandemic to reflect like the new digital age we're in. And I've even updated it since then, now that we're back to a new normal. So during that time as well, I said, well, artists need inspiration. They just don't need information, but they actually need to be inspired because they're stuck in the house and we're dealing with a lot, right? And so I remember reaching out to some folks that I absolutely were fanning over from American Idol, The Voice, Broadway. And folks, I was like, they're not going to like reach out to me, but these are people I've like admired for a really long time, and like they're stuck at home like we are, like so maybe just maybe they would want to like talk to me about their experiences on a web series, kind of like what we're doing today, right? And John, I cannot believe people literally got back to me, so like I ended up interviewing a runner-up from the first season of American Idol, folks from The Voice. The gentleman who he produces McDonald's Gospel Fest, but also produced the televised funerals of Whitney Houston, who's my favorite singer on the planet, and Aretha Franklin. And so I could just can't believe like the caliber of folks that were like, yeah, like not only in my home and like looking for stuff to do, but I also want to sow into the next generation of artists. And we see you as like that bridge. They're like, you're not as old as us, but you're not as young as them. And like, you're the one kind of bringing both together to inspire each other. They're like, as much as we inspire those folks, we can inspire by hearing their stories and helping them out too. So yeah, I did like a 10-part series where I interviewed these legends, living legends in the industry. And so that gave me more fulfillment, right? Yes, that didn't bring the same revenue. Yes, that didn't get the same media buzz or any of the stuff that the Arts Academy was doing, but my heart was so fulfilled that I said, yeah, I made the right pivot.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like too, you started to really focus in on a fairly unique value proposition that was also making you different from other creatives and creators in your space. And so that's just kind of an interesting way that played out. How did you start to manifest that in terms of the, just the organization, the structure, where you focused in terms of what you were delivering?
Mm-hmm. Well, luckily, right, I'd already rebranded my whole business to Roger Lee Arts LLC. So that part was like a very natural progression, which just like, hey, here's some additional services, some products that we offer, right? So from the coaching to the ebooks to the web series and all that, they were just like add-ons, right? And when I first started the company, we didn't have as many add-ons. We had some services, some products. We did have like a dance clothing line that we did, and we still have that. Trying to think what else we did. Music videos for other artists, right? Like we would help like consult on their production. Like I would do the choreography for that. I was like, hey, you need dancers? We got that too. So like we did a few videos for folks. But there were even times I was like choreographing for photo shoots for actual like costume companies. They'd be like, hey, we have like dancers and things that are in these booklets, but we need somebody to come and actually coach them on the right movements or like what's the right costume for their body type and all that stuff. So we were doing some really unique, like unorthodox things, flash mobs. Or we would literally go to like corporations and stuff and be like big company announcements and be like dancers with the signs and like, so we were doing stuff, weddings. I remember the industry, a lot of people were like, oh, this stuff is cheesy or this isn't like what we do traditionally, right? it's not the academic, the high art, and I let all that go, John. I was like, nope, like I'm an entrepreneur and an artist, and these are revenue streams, and we're still bringing joy and value to people. So I'm just really happy I silenced that noise out, from the industry. But all that to say, this just became additional service and product offerings because I already had the structure in place to grow.
Yeah, that's excellent. So as it starts to grow and as you're starting to get a lot of this more repeatable and sustainable, that always kind of gives an entrepreneur the opportunity to take a step back and say, well, what is it really all about? Like, what does it look like to thrive in this space? I'd just love to hear your perspective on, what does thrive look like in this moment? And maybe what are some of the things that you aspire to and just some of the priorities you're focusing on as you now move the business ahead?
That's a wonderful question. So here are a few things I'm really trying to do. Number one, right, with the paintings, I want to exhibit more, and I'm newer at that, right? So I remember like formally going back into painting during the pandemic, and then when we did our big comeback show, there was like a 3-year period where we couldn't because of the pandemic, and so we did the first comeback show. I actually started exhibiting in the lobby, and made that a big part of the night. So it's like, hey, you go in the theater and see the show, but then at the lobby, you check out the art. You could like buy some if you like it, kind of thing. And so I can't believe that we went from that in 2022 to now like coming up this fall. This will actually be our 5th original painting solo exhibition for me. And so I've just been doing it consistently, and I'm learning like when you do something consistently, the years just add up, the numbers add up, right? And so my biggest thing is I just continue to do that, right? Exhibit solo works, but also joining some other exhibitions would be great as well, right? Working with other artists who are really seasoned in that space, because I'm definitely still growing as a visual artist, but still growing as a dancer and choreographer too. So continuing to produce. This fall, I'm really excited. It'll be our 20th production coming up in Philly. And so we were doing 2 a year prior to the pandemic, and then we came back, and then we're back at 2 a year. So this will be number 20. And so it's a big celebration for that. And then the 5th painting stuff, exhibitions, right? And then with the career side of things for artists, what I want to do is write more ebooks. I think I did a great job of just like bringing it all together into one package, being like, hey, here are career building steps. But within those steps, there's so many nuances as well. So like, in the step where you talk about like building income streams, I feel like in the book, right, we kind of just gloss over that. Like we hit some things quickly, but it's more generalist. But there could be a whole spin-off book that goes deeply into all 20 of those money-making resources I talked about, and really delve into those. They could even have a book per, you know what I'm saying? It's like so much more we could do. So I want to write more about these things. We'd love to speak more about these things as well, like conferences and events and on shows like yours, right? Just talking about the power of the arts, why we need artists, why they're worthy of funding and support, all that stuff. And so, yeah, I definitely have dreams, but I think my dreams are rooted in growing what I already have, where the old me was like, oh, I have to change everything, right? I have to like rebrand or rename or figure out some like next big thing. And I finally feel settled, right? Where I don't have to do that. I just have to actually dig deeper into what I've already started.
Yeah. Yeah. When it's like that iterative development and design, moving things ahead. And it just occurs to me, we're getting an opportunity to kind of see some of your artwork in the background here. And I think what's interesting about that part of the story is just how you're integrating the different passions you have in terms of the arts and, kind of bring them into almost like an ecosystem of value that feeds itself. The gallery shows connected to the performing arts shows and those kinds of things. So what do you think if you could go back to your 23-year-old self? I think you said it was around the time this all started. Like, what advice would you give yourself? What would you suggest to say? Here's some shortcuts.
Yeah, the B23 again, right? It's
Right.
It'll be awesome. Just to go back, right? Because and you just everything's always when you're looking back, you're like, wow, that could have been different. And I'm not one to live in regrets, but I'm one to like learn from the past. And so I would have told my 23-year-old self to I'm gonna slow down in some ways, right? I feel like on the journey there was just so much excitement and passion that I started doing a lot very, very quickly with the business. So it's like, oh, we have an ebook. Next month we have this like album coming out, and we're doing this, and like every month was like book, book, book. And so I would have told myself just slow down a bit, like focus on 2 to 3 things that you care deeply about, and go as deep as you possibly can into those areas. And that's a message that we don't get in the arts. It's always about more quantity And not saying quality doesn't matter to folks, but sometimes it feels like quantity over quality. And for me, like, yeah, I would have just told myself, slow down, dig as deep as you can, make the best products possible. But that takes focus and it takes time. So.
Yeah, that's excellent. So what's happening now? I know you've got some things coming up here in the fall. What's next on your horizon here?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So excited for the fall. So, yeah, Roger Lee Dance Company, we're presenting our 20th production, 20th concert series, and every concert series has a different theme. So we've done everything from like outer space to nature and elements, and it's just been a journey. But what we're doing this time is aquarium. So it's our first time we're going under the sea, off the land kind of thing. And so I'm creating an aquatic experience, right? Everything from the lights to the sounds to the paintings, right? There's going to be a solo painting exhibition called Aquarium as well, right? So now the themes of the show always match the themes of the art, so that ties it together. But yeah, it's so exciting. It's happening in Philly, October 25th and 26th. It's family friendly. I do pride myself on that, right? So it's folks can bring their kids, people bring their great grandparents. Like it's a real generational, community based thing. My family's always there, right? We're just having a great time together. Everybody's chatting and taking pictures. This is really, really fun community. Yeah, so it feels like a very professional, high quality arts experience, but you're getting such a family feel environment. And sometimes those things don't go hand in hand. And so I've always tried to like meld that at these shows, right? Also, our fifth solo painting exhibition will be there that same weekend in Philly. And that's all at the Performance Garage, very close to Community College in Philly. So it's really accessible for folks, affordable ticket prices. So yeah, I hope people come out, and for folks who can't come out, right, there's ways to get involved. We do have like a ticket donation program where folks can actually purchase tickets for families in need. And that's been really, really nice seeing people, especially from the corporate world, who are like, hey, like, send some Philly families out here who really, maybe can't afford to send all their kids and people. And it's so great, like calling those folks or visiting them, being like, hey, like we got like X amount of free tickets for you. Just come to this show. And they're always so grateful and things. And I try to always like connect those people back to the actual like corporate folks. So sometimes they just build their own friendships and things that way. But that's amazing. And then people can also sponsor the shows, right? So we have really affordable sponsorship packages for individuals and institutions. So, if you're an individual, you can support us, or if your company wants to do it and get a little more marketing power out of it, then you could do it as well. So, yeah, it's just ways to get involved because everybody's not here in Philly. I get that. So I found new ways to expand the support system with it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So if anyone wants to check out one of those shows or just get in contact with you, what are some of the ways that people could reach out?
Yeah, I love hearing from people. I absolutely love having conversations. Find me on social media at Roger Lee Arts. That's on all the platforms. And then my website, rogerleearts.com. And you can contact me that way and check out more about, what we have going on. But we'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, a question I always like, and I know I'm coming at you without giving you a lot of warning. So, but I like to I do a lot of I do a whole series called Founders in Film, where I share little recaps about films that are focused on founders, and I'd be interested to know if you have a favorite founder film that highlights entrepreneurship, maybe also the arts. I'd just be interested if you had any that come to mind.
That's a good one. And I love so many things, but I have an unorthodox one I'll share with you is Pursuit of Happiness. And that, I count as a founder film because that person was a non-traditional entrepreneur and they went on to like sell millions of their products. But at the time they were just hustling, trying to figure that out, right? Having one product and really no support. I mean, literally like nothing going on. They lost their home, they lost everything, and they still had their child with them. And so to go from that to the success at the end of the movie was, I just always watch it for inspiration. And nothing lifts me up more. I'm like, wow, they didn't have the LLC. They didn't have like half the stuff that we all are blessed to have, right? But they still figured it out.
Yeah, I love Chris's story because it's like the hustle, the grit, the determination, everything just seems like it's going sideways and refusing to give up. The resilience is such a great story. A really good choice. I love it. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, Roger, thanks so much for being on the channel. It's been great hearing your story. I'm sure anyone watching this has got to be feeling compelled to go check out the show this fall. I've been a scuba diver most of my life, so I love the underwater, under the sea theme. I'm looking forward to it. So thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you, John. So appreciate you.
Awesome. Keep going.